to encourage our students to ask questions too. Our faculty always jump in because that's how engaged we are, but we really want to encourage students. You don't have to be expert in this area to have ideas and thoughts and questions.
But this time I'll take your question.
I'm in a tug of war between you two. Well, I was going to say too that sometimes industry really gets a jump on things because I've been approached at conference. I've been thrown off because I was at a scientific conference, and you get approached early on as soon as they see an abstract that has hair dyes. Clairol is at my poster. Or if I go to a conference on, and I think it's scientists and researchers on somewhere where pesticides were raised once upon a time as a possibility, and there's an industry representative there. And I guess, how would you suggest that people respond to these early inquiries?
So it's a fascinating problem in that right now Juul is having trouble finding scientists who want to work for them and finding institutions willing to accept money from them. Because everybody knows that tobacco money is addictive, just like nicotine is addictive. I mean, you get money and you hire staff, and then you think, well, if I say this, am I going to not get next year's funding? And it's very tough to do. And I think it's worthwhile to think about taking industry money if it's set up in a certain way. It's obviously you have the right to publish. They have no role in the design. But at the same time, you have to be aware that this could be a very short-term thing, and that's painful. Right? And there are no easy answers to that. That's why there should be systems where, industry puts money into a fund, and then the money is given out to researchers to do the research, who then don't have to come back and worry about if they find something positive, does that mean they'll never be funded again? That's what I'd like to see. So. Yes.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm in the Environmental Health Science and Policy program. I really liked what you said about how we should regulate classes of chemicals rather than just individual ones. What do you think we as researchers, and especially as young researchers going out into the world of public health, how can we start to move that ahead if we're not directly policy people?
Well, I think you could write sort of reviews and sort of say, this is what we know and this is what we don't know, pointing out what, many of these reviews say, well, we know a lot about X, but there are questions about this. And so the overall conclusion is that more research needs to be done. But that's a limited conclusion. I mean, the research, yes, we always need more research, but if you write and if, in your thinking about this, you say, more research needs to be done, but based on what do we know now, and how should we ensure that people are properly protected on the basis of that knowledge? Do we have knowledge that it's safe, or do we have knowledge that certain exposures are safe? And you can look at least in terms of your reviews, very differently than some of those reviews I pointed out there, which they just say, well, we just don't know. I mean, I could predict the findings of some of these consultant companies. They always say more research is needed, so therefore we shouldn't do anything. But I think you can frame it very differently. And certainly, I mean, there are examples of this. And I think people are getting this. There's been a petition to the Consumer Product Safety Commission to regulate organohalogen flame retardants as a class rather than individually. Because it's the same thing. We know a lot about some of them, and they're really sort of very bad for pediatric development, and we don't know about other ones. And at the big hearing, the guy who's now chairman of the Consumer Product Safety Commission said to the American Chemistry Council, can you give me any evidence that these are safe? Any of these are safe. That's, he's been waiting for 2 years now. He hasn't gotten a response. That's what I talked to him. So I think making sure we frame things that way is really important. Yes?
Do you think, I know you said earlier on that like the Koch brothers obviously finance heavily into like finding abstracts like that, well not brother, I guess. Do you find that with something like the overturning of Citizens United, for example, like is there sort of a point at which you can run up against where until public opinion really shifts and you can put out that there is sort of, because it's the Supreme Court and that needs to, you'd be crazy, it's very hard now to overturn that, so how do you?
Well, there are different pieces of it, but clearly, I mean, one of the issues is really that we have a lot of legislators who sort of at least superficially buy into what the Koch brothers. And so I was at a meeting with Senator Sheldon in the White House, who's a very outspoken public health advocate. I said, you know, how is this possible? How do people, you know, who you think are otherwise intelligent, believe these things? And he said, it's all about money and Citizens United. That it used to be, if you were a senator, you had a really terrible component of the job, which is begging for money, and you have to do that a lot less now, because that money pours in. But that's the unstated quid pro quo is you buy into these positions. So Citizens United certainly plays a role in that. I don't think that they're very effective in convincing the public, but they're, because I think there's already sort of this echo chamber of people who sort of put that out. But maybe Jeff has more thinking on this. Jeff is a guest here in this department. He's with management, health policy management. So that's what's happening here.
A different model than for potentially taking industry money to support research would be through user fees. And so that's how some of the current NIH tobacco research is being funded, through the user fees that the cigarette industry, tobacco industry is paying to FDA, and then FDA transfers it. And so you could
Right, so the
come up with
government,
similar
government
kind of
is the
scheme.
conduit, right?
Right.
The government collects the money, that's right, and user fees.
And launders the money,
Well,
right?
yes. No, that's right.
Yeah.
There is this smoke-free foundation. And this is
Philip Morris.
this is the Derek Jack history.
Yeah.
Okay, and the argument is that yes, he has Philip Morris money, but it is no strings attached. And the kind of arguments are extremely convincing. I think this is a side that an initiative that talks a lot about your final points, and it's very difficult to discuss this. The Lancet paper that he published at the beginning of this foundation and the continuous publications and funding that they are doing. It's extremely.
So this is a big debate within the public health community, whether, you know, the Philip Morris funded a very large foundation run by a fellow who used to be really in charge of tobacco control at the World Health Organization. And then the question is it tainted money? Are there strings attached? And I know that there's been a statement of many of the deans of School of Public Health saying, don't touch the money. But there's a separation between is the money tainted because it's, you know, tobacco, which is worse than anything else, versus are there strings attached? And it's a worthwhile discussion to have around the ethics of it.
And our school did sign on. to
Yeah,
that
of course,
thing.
we're assigned to that. Yes, you and,
My name's Bryn, I'm in the global.
and you're in my class.
I am, yes. I'm just thinking about the media's role in this. Like, for example, last week I get an email from the New York Times that red meat is, there's no proven negative health effects to red meat. And then a week later,
They
they're
cut
like,
it,
just
the response.
kidding, the lead researcher had ties to the meat industry. But like, what's the damage that's done during that week's time? I know that they love those headlines, but it undermines trust.
It's very complicated, and reporters often, you know, they take the press release. It's complicated. I don't know the answer to that. How you know, I mean, you can't ask. I mean, it's hard enough for people who have degrees in public health to understand the science or to read the labels, but most people can't do that. I mean, you know, it's not. You can't ask them. So the government has to sort of step in and do the right thing, I think. Yes.
Okay, Jack Sandberg, you guys know me. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. That's my favorite role. Let's try two things. Juul is instructive. Vaping is instructive in the first place because there is the argument that there's significant harm reduction. Right? That's going on.
I don't disagree with that at all.
So the argument that innocence should not be assumed, right, is therefore if you say that, you know, well, let's assume guilt and restrict any new chemical, you're restricting harm reduction. Now I'll give you another example: genetically modified foods. Right? Genetically modified foods have the potential to feed a world that is stressed nutritionally. Lots of people come after them and say, well, there must be something wrong with them. We shouldn't presume to be innocent before they're guilty. And so to have to produce evidence, right, that something isn't harmful is much more difficult than producing evidence that something is harmful, just
Well,
throwing
no,
that.
I think you raised two very important examples, and I think Juul's a great example. I think e-cigarettes are fabulous for smokers, but the fact that, that Juul is allowed to market them widely, and,
Yeah, every day.
the last survey was 3 million high school and middle school students smoked the e-cigarette in the last 30 days. I mean, the numbers are just off the charts. So you've got to, I'm not saying we should forbid selling e-cigarettes, but I think, we should have this discussion 2 years ago before they started selling, or 5 years ago, watermelon flavored.
But we'd also know a lot more
If they did.
if OMB had not stopped the
Yes.
deeming rule, the
Yes.
FDA sought to regulate e-cigarettes.
Under
And-
Obama.
Under Obama, and it was stopped
Yes.
by the Obama
Right.
OMB. And if that rule had gone through, we'd know a whole lot more about what's in those
Right.
chemicals than we do today.
Right, and the same is true of GMO. I mean, I have no problem with selling GMO, I think they need to be heavily researched. But I think that's what we need to be doing, especially since it's going to be widely used, and what people are going to have wide exposures. Because you can't prove the negative, but you could get a lot more evidence than we have on e-cigarettes, for example, because they just haven't done those studies.
Yeah, but that's gonna be a long term, that's gonna take a long.
But it shouldn't have been. I mean, you should have done those studies before we
Yeah.
went down that road. That's the problem.
It seems one of the dilemmas is there's a certain amount of trust that we put into these studies, right? That there's an honor system in the scientific community. One of those journals you mentioned, I'm actually published in, so is George, the regulatory pharmacology, et cetera. And even if I was reviewing that paper, the Volkswagen paper, I could not have known that when the Volkswagen was rigged. I could not have known, a lot of aspects of that study. I just look at it, assess the general approach, the science, et cetera,
Sure.
and assess it that way. So it seems that it's easy to sort of set up how do you know when?
There are no easy answers here. But that's absolutely right. And, not every publication, not every article in regulatory toxicology, pharmacology is rigged at all. I mean, it's a lot of very, normal, respectable, mostly, no offense, boring articles go in there.
That's how you get published.
This is the Paris School of Toxicology. But it's true. So how do you do that? But I think we need to have standards, and we need to have a constant discussion about this. But sponsorship is really important, obviously, and financial conflict of interest is really an important question. Who pays for it?
Can I ask one quick question? So how do I know when uncertainty is manufactured and when it's real?
Well,
So,
we
like,
don't.
are eggs good for me, or is pig egg?
Well, that's the
But
big, yeah.
responsible.
I think what's really important is you have to have, as much as you can, to have authoritative, independent bodies review this. Now, the literature is going to change, but you certainly don't want people with an axe to grind being part of that discussion or doing the advertising of it. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but and you have to try to work it out. It's not clear. But sometimes it's very different when you're talking about a product like eggs, which if they're around, people are going to eat them.
Widespread exposure and all those things you're just talking about, and we presume they're good? Yeah.
Well, there's been a big fight over this. Who do you blame for heart disease, right?
Right.
No. Yes.
So where are the best places to go to do your independent research on the researchers of these articles?
Well, I'll tell you what I always do. The first thing I always do when I read a paper that looks a little fishy to me is I go to the University of California, San Francisco Tobacco Legacy Library. And I see if that researcher was working for the tobacco industry. Which it always, and you can't believe what you find in there. And then you say, oh, well, that's interesting. And that's not just positive because, there are various reasons people work for tobacco or not, but at least that tells you. There's no one answer, but it's important to sort of look at who's paying for it and what other studies they've done. And that's what came up in this meat study that, that some people said, if you look back just a couple of years, this researcher, who's a Canadian researcher, was working for the International Life Sciences Institute, which actually has some very good people working for them, but he was really promoting the non-hazardous nature of sugar. And this was 5 years ago, and now he's doing this. So that's why people are saying, well, is this an honest review? I can't answer that, and you have to sort of dig into it. But the fact that he didn't, or that didn't come out in the first one is what sort of causes all this confusion. Where someone comes back and says, well, he was working with this ILSI. This ILSI group was set up by Coca-Cola, and the vice president of Coca-Cola was the